Hello and welcome back. I'm Joe, and today I'm going to give you a very simple answer of why you should absolutely build an orphanage. Joe was wrong. In Workers and Resources, there has been one building that went through a lot of different problems. Very early on, the orphanage was not working because it would constantly just overload itself, and when it was overloaded, all the children would get angry, become criminals, become disloyal, run away, would not help your republic, and everything will just go down the drain. That was fixed a few years back, several months back, at least a year ago. But I never came around to really appreciate what the orphanage actually does for you. So I wanted to set up a test because people on my current British Asia season playthrough Let's Play have pointed out, why don't you build an orphanage? Why haven't you built an orphanage yet? And my assumption was, I don't want to build an orphanage because an orphanage requires 40 workers. That's 120 people per day. And I would much rather use them for something else. But, I was wrong. So I ran a test. Here's the setup. This is the city that I made the setup in. There is a radio station that helps a little bit with loyalty in the beginning, and then not really. It depends what you set this up for. I played with these numbers a little bit, honestly. It didn't make a huge difference because I didn't have enough workers for quite some time. Then happiness stays near between 83 and 87% most of the time. We only have the Norpo flats. They have everything that they want. Settings wise, I have everything on. The only thing I turned off is global events severe because earthquakes decided to destroy a couple things a couple times, and every year already takes long enough, so I didn't want to deal with that. Everything else is all on. No research and no realistic mode for obvious reasons. But that is all here. So they have everything that they need. They have no road connection to the shopping center and the radio station, so some crimes do go unpatrolled. But one of the big issues that we had very early on with the original orphanages was high criminality rating, and that is no longer a problem. So what happened? In the first year, we started with 1,600 citizens on April 10th, and that went okay. We had almost no unemployment, we had everyone happy, and the orphanage, as you would probably expect, was completely empty of children for almost most of the first year. And then they started slowly showing up. This is the second year and the results of that. How much growth did we see? Let me jump to something that actually shows you that. All the numbers that I'm going to show you will be made available to Patreons and YouTube members if you want to play with them, as well as the saves. But this is effectively what we see. The complete comparison shows us that in year one, we had 1,160 workers, about 120 children from 0 to 6, then 181 children 7 to 15, and 135 children 16 to 21. That is what we started with. That is what both saves. There's a control that runs without the orphanage on, and there's a test that runs with the orphanage on, goes through. In year one, we actually had a small decline in workers for the test with the orphanage on, where the control had slightly more workers. But we had an increase in children 0 to 6, we had an increase in children 7 to 15, and we had an increase in children 16 to 21. And guess what? At the end of year two, that translated to a much bigger increase in workers. Same with children from 0 to 6 and 7 to 15. And then some of the children from 16 to 21 actually moved on to become workers already, which is a good thing. You want workers. You don't just want your children. So we have actually a slight dip in the 16 to 21-year-olds. However, this is all running with one orphanage. From 0 to 1 years, the orphanage was very underutilized. I usually saw 1 to 2 children in there, but that made enough of a difference that we saw increases that we see right here. In year one to year two, that utilization went up quite a bit. I actually saw the orphanage being overutilized quite a little bit, and that's what you see in the numbers here. You can't really tell it there, but blue is always a test, red is always the control, and worker comparisons, almost the same. Test is a little worse, and in the second year, we see the increase already. Children-wise, something very similar, but blue is higher, as you would expect, because orphans if they stick around in the Republic. And I should probably mention, how do you get orphans? It is people go to prison. It is people dying. It is people escaping. It is people dying in a fire. There's a lot of different reasons why the game creates orphans. But if those parents disappear and the orphans don't have a place to go, they disappear as well. So having an orphanage is just a safety net for them to be caught, so you don't lose those future workers. And that's what we see here. 7 to 15, same thing. Generally more kids around. In the last year, again, most of the 16 to 21-year-olds were already workers. What is that difference in percentage? In the first year, we got slightly less workers, so this is a small yellow right there, but then we had an increase of 5% in children, almost 10% in 7 to 15-year-olds, 14% in 16 to 21-year-olds. Year 2, that effectively doubled. So we went from 5.4% to 8.3%, from 9.8% to 14%, and then here we stayed the same, 13.8% to, hold on, I'm looking at the right numbers. Here, this is the one where we lost a lot of people. And you can look at that a bunch of different numbers. In general, we saw an increase in people. The increase can be summarized right here. It's about 3 to 3.5% per year. So the first year, we had an increase just by having the orphanage on of 3.5%. In the second year, this is, continuously running, we doubled that from 3.5 to not 7%, but 5.3%. So somewhere between 2.5 and 3.5% is your increase per one orphanage. Once that one orphanage is fully utilized, you want to build a second one, because it's just like some other buildings, it is Republic-wide. So as long as there's room in an orphanage, you can collect or get more people out of them. So this is an accumulative effect where you get these 3% that will create more children, and those children, if they have to go to an orphanage, also come back. Plus, the distribution and the population growth is more exponential, because you get more people the more kids you had, and that just moves on and moves on and moves on. So having an orphanage increases growth of your Republic. Some of the growth is bigger, some of the growth is more normal, but overall, having an orphanage has the positive effect of having more children, which means more workers in your Republic, which is a net positive. What are the negative effects? Honestly, they're not there anymore. So when you do have your orphanage, you do want to make sure that you actually utilize it correctly, which means orphanages like radio stations and like TV stations have intended upbringing settings that you can just set to whatever you want. If your government loyalty is low, just make sure that you increase that a little bit. You need high loyalty values in your Republic to keep this high. So if your government loyalty is already low, this is not going to help. However, the criminality rating is also relatively important. So just leave these as you have them. For the test, I ran the orphanage as the default settings, but the radio station I did play around a little bit and increase survey propaganda just to keep things level enough. But overall, everything was default, and the orphanage only consumes about 120 people. When does it not make sense? I just told you that your increase is about 3%, right? The increase of population is about 3% year over year. 120 people is what percentage out of your population right now? If it is more than 3%, probably an orphanage is not really worth it just yet. But once you are below that 3% mark, that actually means that you're going to make more people than you're spending making those people. It's just a return on investment, right? So it's totally worth to have an orphanage in there. You do have to supply it with food and clothing, but most of the time you need that anyway, so that's not really a big deal. Everything else, it's just a normal building, and you can tell them some of your other settings. That's all. Bebojo was wrong. An orphanage is worth it. I will start building that in the new season. Hopefully I see you there, and maybe you learned something. Again, if you want access to all of these things, just become a patron or YouTube member. I will make it available for purchase on Patreon as well, so there's just a thing that you can download from there. Hopefully that all makes sense. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.